Well, returning to one of our top stories now, and this is the escalating tensions and violence between Gaza as well as Israel as well. Joining me live from Ashkelon now is I-24 reporter Batya Levinthal. Batya, thanks for your time this evening. Can you first of all give us an idea of what you've seen, what you've witnessed, what you've heard just over the last couple of hours this evening, your time?
Yes, Peter. Well, it's been quite quiet here in Ashkelon, in the southern district here in Israel. We're about 6 miles, so it's roughly about 8 kilometers away from the Gaza Strip. But over the last couple of hours, just before the quiet did sort of kick in, we did hear quite a few rocket sirens and quite a large amount of booms overhead. We've actually been taking refuge quite a few times in bomb shelters, and I'll add random bomb shelters. We've been driving from location to location around the city in Ashkelon, trying to get to the houses and the people that were hit in order to report from there. But often the sirens go off while we're in the car and we need to stop on the side of the road, get out and run to those shelters. Here in the city, you have about 30 seconds maximum in order to reach a shelter. At the moment, it's relatively quiet and has been for the past hour and a half. But this is a city that experiences often this kind of conflict. They're used to it. They understand what is going to happen. And so they're prepared for it. But it's a very, very, very tragic reality here on the ground. While we're reporting outside now, we're hoping that the sirens don't go off again. But if they do, we're going to have to take refuge yet again in a bomb shelter.
And Batya, are you able to confirm reports that Israeli tanks have moved towards the border?
Unfortunately not. The IDF has not released any statement yet confirming or denying that tanks have entered. We know that they did say that a ground operation wasn't necessarily on the cards. We know that there has been an aerial operation and constant bombardment on both sides. The IDF striking targets in the Gaza Strip, mainly targets belonging to the Hamas terrorist organization. We're talking about their headquarters and where most of them live in that area. So that's been a massive target for the IDF. But whether or not a ground invasion is on the cards is unconfirmed yet by the IDF.
Yeah, not a little too early in that front. What about rockets that do come from Gaza? Most of them are intercepted by the Iron Dome, as we know, but have you seen many of them get through? Because still some are able to get through.
Well, the Iron Dome is only between 85 to 90% effective. So if you think about that, quite a few of the rockets that are coming over are landing in open areas. Sometimes they're landing in areas that are populated. Even tonight, for example, while we were taking refuge in a shelter, we could hear some of the booms overhead. And when you hear those booms overhead, you know that the rockets have been intercepted by the Iron Dome defense system. What is quite concerning is when you don't hear those booms. It means that the rocket has fallen somewhere. Earlier, after we were able to get out safely from the bomb shelter, we did drive around to the center of the city, where we found a piece of a rocket had actually landed in the gravel on the road, quite a main road in a very residential area. And what was quite concerning to authorities there was that the rocket on the way down had managed to strike an electrical cord and a gas pipeline. So this electrical cord lying in the gas pipeline, while pieces of a rocket was there was heat emanating from the ground from this rocket, was all making a very dangerous and very explosive area, to the point where we had a whole bunch of authorities there, including the fire department and the bomb squad, to try and remove this piece safely, cool it down, and make sure that in terms of the electrical currents mixed in with the gas leak that was there, didn't set off any further damage in the area.
How close are those rockets getting to now your cities such as Tel Aviv and perhaps even Jerusalem?
Relatively close. Just last night we were in Tel Aviv. The scary part about that there, Peter, is that normally we know at about 6 or 9 p.m. local time, that's when Hamas tends to send those rockets over. But what's really interesting about the conflict this time around is the fact that those rockets have been coming through to Tel Aviv. This is not a normal thing that happens here in Israel. When it does flare up like this, it's normally the attacks coming from Gaza are on the areas south of Israel. We're talking about the periphery of Gaza, as well as areas like the city we're in now, Ashkelon. Targeting Tel Aviv is relatively unusual, and what's even more unusual this time around is the severity of the rockets coming over. Normally we have 1 or 2 every couple of hours. This has been in the true definition of a real barrage of rockets. Last night in Tel Aviv at 3 o'clock in the morning, totally unexpected, we heard 130 rockets being fired at Israel between the hours of 3 and 4 a.m. local time. Very, very frightening for the residents there that have often said that Tel Aviv is untouchable to these terrorists, not because they don't have the capabilities, but they wouldn't be smart enough, or they would be smart enough not to target Tel Aviv.
Okay, yeah, you get a feeling there's a sense of inevitability about this following similar wars in 2012 and 2014, particularly when it comes to a potential ground incursion, like you mentioned there. Batya Levinthal, a reporter with I-24. Appreciate your time this evening. We'll talk to you again soon.